Machine types have always heavily been associated with the Earth attribute, to the point where there's a lot of support specifically for Earth machines in the game. And in this video, we're going to go over some of the best of them. Start us off at number 10, we have Red Gadget. This is a level 4 1300 attack monster which on summon, searches out a yellow gadget specifically from your deck. The first 3 gadget monsters were the first Earth machines to make a serious impact in the metagame, as they formed a powerful resource loop within themselves. Red searches yellow, which searches green, then it searches red again, essentially making it so that if you see one, you'll have access to all the other ones throughout the duel. Any of them could have been chosen for the spot on this list, but red stands out due to having the highest stats total. Either way, Gadget decks focus on outvaluing other decks, with each of these machines being a +1 on summon. They max out on all kinds of 1-for-1 removals, such as Smashing Ground, since the biggest gadget was only 1400 attack. They couldn't even get over a lot of utility monsters by themselves. Even after this kind of strategy was no longer viable by itself with the game speeding up, Gadget still managed to see play in a couple of other decks throughout the years. During this Synchro era, they remained relevant as great partners to the Machina cards, as they're great ways to have discard fodder for Fortress. Once XCs dropped, they were used together with 10 goldfish to guarantee a rank 4 play every turn for the rest of the game, as these two could go into gear Gigant X to go into your other goldfish for the following turns. These little guys might not have been relevant in a long time, but as the first monsters of this combination have some success, they more than deserve a spot on this list. And coming in number 9, we have Geargiarmor. This is a level 4 monster with 1100 attack and 1900 defense. Once per turn, you can activate its effect to flip it face down. Additionally, when this card is flipped face up, you can add another Geargia monster from your deck to your hand. Geargiarmor is the main reason why Geargias were as good as they were in their time, as it gives the deck both consistency and follow-up all at once. In an age where cards, which went +1 on summon, were commonplace, Armor set itself apart by being able to reuse its effect turn after turn. Though it's inherently slower than these other kinds of searchers, its beefy defense at least meant it wouldn't be beat over by any monsters, and even if it was, you'd still get your search. Geargiarmor also often supplemented this by playing a beefy trap lineup, as you really wanted to protect Armor during the early game. Still, despite this seemingly slow monster being the main part of their game plan, Geargia was still a deck with great combo potential, which could kill you out of nowhere. With Geargia Accelerator and Gear, the deck could summon an endless amount of monsters to convert into rank 4s for turn 3 setups. This kill potential was even stronger once the Karakuri engine began to be trenched in. On turn 3, you could pivot into the Karakuri Synchro 7 and bring out Nishipachi from your deck to change Armor's position and trigger it again, leading to a lot of bodies on the field and advantage. Being able to match both slower strategies like Hat as well as faster ones like Sylvan's is what made Geargia such a popular choice in 2014. And coming in at number 8, we have Machina Fortress. This is a level 7 monster with 2500 attack, which can special summon itself from your hand or graveyard by discarding machine monsters whose totals levels equals 8 or more. If it's destroyed by battle while it's on the field, you get to target and destroy a card your opponent controls. Also, if your opponent activates an effect that targets it, you can look at their hand and discard one card from there. Machina Fortress was the ultimate payoff given to machine decks up around the Synchro era. This card could be searched by Machina Gearframe, and it could just keep coming back every turn from the graveyard while you had machine fodder in your hand. Fortress is actually easier to summon out than it seems, because while it's in the hand, you can have it discard itself to pay for its summoning costs, meaning that you really only need another machine of any level to bring it out. Once it's brought out, this card was still a massive pain to deal with, as its stat line lets you match the Monarchs and a lot of synchros. Also, lots of monster effects commonly used as removal would also give you some free hand disruption if they had to resort to it. Now, the main thing that held back Machina was how much they died to the side deck. Cyber Dragon could easily out an entire field of machines through its contact fusion, and that card was a card everyone was siding. To make matters worse, if machines were ever a bit more represented than usual, you could also just side in System Down for yet another complete blowout. Even so, the archetype still managed to see a decent amount of play throughout the years, very often when mixed with gadgets, and Fortress would keep popping up even in modern Earth machine decks, as it can special summon itself multiple times a turn while dumping machines from the hand. And at number 7, we have Card Trooper. This is a level 3 Earth machine monster that lets you once per turn mill up to 3 cards from the top of your deck. And then this card gains 500 attack until the end of the turn for each card milled this way. Also, if this card is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you draw 1 card. Trooper became a staple instantly upon release, as one of the best value monsters around. This card gets to mill 3 cards every turn, and it came out just at the right time when graveyard synergies were becoming more and more common. Many decks were playing things like Destiny Disc Commander and Dark Magician of Chaos, which were great to revive later on. Trooper also gets up to a pretty respectable 1900 attack the turn it does so, making it match up very well against a lot of other normal summons around. Lastly, since it draws you a card on destruction, it also instantly makes up for its minus in card advantage when it gets dealt with. This card was splashed into a ton of strategies, and was even the main centerpiece of the Troop Dupe Scoop, which was a deck that would try to activate machine duplication on Card Trooper and bring out 2 other copies from your deck for an insurmountable swing and advantage. This led to Trooper being put to 1 soon after its release, but that didn't stop many strategies from playing it all throughout the game's history. We saw it in Dat Turbo, Zombies, Light Sworns, Dandy Warrior, far too many decks to talk about all of them. Card Trooper became especially good in Dragon Rulers, since not only did they greatly enjoy milling, they could also recycle it with Debris Dragon, where negating its effect wouldn't matter as it mills for cost. It wouldn't be until Dante's release until this card fell off, who was fittingly pretty much just Card Trooper from the extra deck. And at number 6, we have Infinitrack Tunneller, a level 5 machine. You can special summon it from your hand in defense position by tributing an Earth Machine monster, and it has a graveyard effect where you can banish it and shuffle back 5 Earth Machines into your deck to draw 2 cards. Now, Tunneller has always been a big part of why pure Earth Machine decks have worked. It's a level 5 body that can easily be summoned from the deck with Brutal Dozer. By going Dozer into Tunneller, you're also overlaying into River Stormer right afterwards, which can then add another Earth Machine. Its effect not only allows you to draw 2 cards at the end of your combo, but also recycles all of your 1-ofs to let you do it again during your next turn. Resolving this card is huge for the deck, as though it is usually light at interactions, it can go through both it and Machina Overdrive to draw 3 cards in total, which will hopefully have Floodgates or some other powerful non-engine pieces to deal with your opponent. Tunneller would also go on to be one of the scariest pieces of the Superheavy Samurai full combo earlier this year. In there, this card is searchable through Ancient Gear Box, since it only has 500 attack. You'd go into the Ancient Gear link to for Box, and then Box, which would get you to Tunneller, giving you 2 bodies for you to then Pendulum Summon out and then link off into Appaloosa. In that deck, resolving this card's draw effect after having all the copies in the graveyard would almost guarantee you to draw into a couple of hand traps. This would make sure you'd still have a fighting chance even if you were hit by a board breaker, and so was one of the biggest reasons why this deck was as scary as it was. And at number 5, we have Qliphort Scout. This is a level 5 Pendulum normal monster with a scale effect that lets you, once per turn, pay 800 life points to add any Qli card from your deck to your hand. It also prevents you from special summoning non-Qlis while it's up. Scout was one of the biggest reasons why Qliphorts were the first successful Pendulum deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! The thing that held Pendulums back at first was that you always needed to open a high scale and a low scale to play. But with Scout's search effect, you could get to both of them off of a single card. This card being a normal monster also added another huge boon to its consistency, since that meant it was searchable through Summoner's Art. A Scout on the scale had to be answered as soon as possible, since it could be triggered every turn to give the Qli pilot as many bodies as possible to Pendulum Summon out. Additionally, since Scout is only a soft once per turn, it could also be triggered again if you could manage to bounce it back to your hand, which people often did with either Trample Links or Stealth effects. All of this consistency helped Qli operate on a different level than the other Pendulum strategies of the time did, since all you needed was a single copy of this card to get your entire engine going. You could fill the rest of your deck with powerful non-engine pieces. Back during Master Rule 3, you could have both scales set up and still set 5 back row afterwards, so most players chose to fill these slots with counter traps and floodgates. All of this led to Qliphort being one of the most powerful but also most hated decks at that time. And at number 4, we have Gigant X. This is a rank 4 that takes 2 level 4 machine monsters to be made. Once per turn, it can detach material to search any level 4 or lower machine monster from your deck. Also, if this face-up card leaves the field, you can target and special summon a level 3 or lower Geargiarmor monster from your graveyard. Gigant X has consistently been one of the best pieces of machine support ever since it first came out over 10 years ago. Both Gadgets and Geargiarmor decks, which we talked about previously, were more than proficient at turboing this card out. It would often go through 3 copies of it throughout a duel. Being able to search any low-level machine with it is the whole reason why Karakuri Geargiarmor existed, since this could search the then limited Gen X ally Birdman. This card would show up again in ABC since the deck was also made entirely of level 4 machines. It could be used to either search for the missing pieces or one of the Gadget retrains for another rank 4 play. However, where this card would truly shine again would be in Superheavy Samurai earlier this year. Since most of the good Super Heavies are level 4, you could go into Geargiarmor through your combo to search for Cyberstein, and then you could Pendulum Summon it out to have a Nature Exterior protecting your board. This interaction was even the reason why Cyberstein eventually got banned again after so many years. Gigant X offers an extremely powerful effect, which will only get better as more machines are released, and is only somewhat held back by its unique summoning materials. And at number 3, we have Deskbot 001. This is a level 1 tuner Earth Machine monster with 500 attack and defense, which gains 500 more for each machine monster you control. Also, if 2 or more machine monsters are special summoned at the same time while this card is in the graveyard, you can special summon it to the field. 001 started out as a great engine piece within its own deck, Deskbots. Its effect let it help greatly with OTK, but it was most important for giving the deck a great way to access the extra deck due to being a tuner. Having this card alongside the 2 best normal summons of the deck, 003 and 004, would let you end on either Arc Light for an Omni Negate or a Nat Beast to shut your opponent out of spells. What's interesting is that 001 could be used multiple times throughout the same turn, between Machine Duplication and Pendulum Summoning, which Deskbots were both able to use. However, this card would become notable later and go on to be splashed in a variety of other decks due to Crystron Halki Fibrax. Hal can bring out a low-level tuner from your deck, which 001 just so happens to be, and since both it and Halk are machine monsters, you can then link them off for Mecha Phantom Beast Auroradon. Since this card then makes 3 machine tokens, 001 triggers and comes back to the field again to enable further synchro plays. This is what made possible both the standard Halk line, where if that card resolved you'd enter an Arclight and Savage Dragon, as well as Yazi lines, which Adventure Synchro and some builds of Sword Soul would choose to go for. These aren't any relevant to today's metagame, as over time they ended up banning both Halk and Auroradon. But that doesn't change how for a really long time this card was an ever-present engine requirement in a ton of meta decks. And now for number 2, we have Superheavy Samurai Motorbike. This is a level 2 tuner, which if you have no spell or trap cards in your graveyard, you can discard it to add a Superheavy Samurai from your deck to your hand, except another copy of itself. It also has an effect on the field where you can target a machine monster on the field and increase its level by 2. Motorbike, alongside the rest of the Superheavy Samurai Legacy support, is what helped catapult the deck into its short-lived Tier 1 status. This card can get you into Wakaushi, the archetype's best starter, as well as to any of its various different extenders. Though it ends up doing much more for the deck than simply being a searcher. It was actually very important for Superheavy Samurai to go through this card early on during your turn, as it's the best monster to bring back from the graveyard with Excel Synchro, since it can then be immediately synchroed up for Baronne de Fleur to protect the rest of the line from hand traps. Even the level modulation effect could come up at times, as it can boost itself into a 4, allowing you to make a rank 4 or set up some other synchro plays. Even now that the deck has been severely hit by the ban list, Bike remains one of the best parts of their engine. Since Soul Piercer and Wagon are no longer one-card combos, starting your turn off with Wakaushi is much more important, and Bike is at the very least more copies of that. Superheavy Samurai may not be the threat it once was, but its brief existence changed the meta as a whole, forcing most people to main deck draw on Lockbird and other hand traps to have a chance when going second. For making Super Heavies go from one of the worst long-running archetypes out there into such a powerful threat, Motorbike ranks up there as one of the best pieces of legacy support ever released. And finally, at number 1, we have Therion King Regulus. This is a level 8 Earth machine with 2800 attack. It has a hand effect where you can target a Therion monster or a machine monster in your graveyard to special summon this card and then equip that monster to this card. And while on the field, when your opponent activates a card or effect, you can send a Therion monster from your hand or field to the graveyard to negate it. Also, a Therion monster equipped with this card gains 700 attack and that previous effect. Regulus is one of the best boss monsters in recent memory, being able to supply an Omni Negate to many decks while also being a huge body. This card's release was a huge boost to ABC decks when it had first come out. Regulus combos extremely well the individual pieces, as they can special summon themselves from the spell and trap card zone after being equipped by Regulus because of their union effects. However, this card also helped birth a new strategy of its own, Therion Punk. The main Punk combo of the time involved laddering into Chaos Ruler and then later the Zombie Vampire to mill a lot of cards and generate a ton of advantage. The Therions loved this as they need some graveyard setup to be able to special summon themselves out. Since you'll usually be able to mill 9 off of a single Zia Min, this meant that these decks could play a lot of them. After all, they'd pretty much always be alive once the first part of the combo went through. This was especially good with Regulus, as it had the strongest effect on the field, and its negate could also be given out to any other Therion in your hand if it had been sent to the graveyard at some point. Beyond that, this card also saw play in Rika, as they can search Lily Borea to get Regulus, and Superheavy Samurai, which can get into it through Qliphort Genius. Recently, Regulus has only become more searchable, as the release of Gigantic Champion Sargass means any rank 4 or rank 8 play can search it out now. This card is one of the best, most easily accessible Omnis in today's metagame, and it's sure to be at least a consideration in any deck that plays machines or mills a lot, making it by far the best Earth machine in the game. Alright, and that's the list. If you happen to know of any other cards we may have missed, or have any ideas for future videos just like this one, please let us know down in the comments below.